So today we're going to be doing Steph Bower's book tag. I just watched this video recently and I thought that this would be a very fun idea to do. So let's get started. A book you tell people is your favorite. I picked Carrie Soto by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So this question she kind of explained is someone who you're not super close to, maybe doesn't know that you read that much, and just like ask you what your favorite book is. So I picked Carrie Soto is Back. This is one of my favorite books, but it's literary fiction, so it's a little more interesting, I guess, to explain than just some like, oh, I love this romance, enemies to lovers with the one bed trope. Like it, especially when you're not close to them, you don't want to like say that kind of stuff to someone. And Carrie Soto is Back is just one that's, I guess, sounds more mature. I don't know, makes me sound smarter in a way, explaining that it's about this girl that played tennis and was the best of her time, and years later someone's, after she's retired, is kind of coming back to take her spot as number one and beat her record. So she's getting back into training post retirement and trying to beat this player. Makes me sound a little bit smarter. A book that is your guilty pleasure. I picked Girl Online by Zoe Sugg. I don't know how many people have read this book, but I still am a Zoe fan. But especially when I was younger, I was the biggest Zoe fan ever. I had so much of her skincare line that she made, her makeup collections, her accessories. I bought the books. I wasn't even a big reader at the time, but I picked these up and honestly, I really, really, really loved them. It's about YA romance. It's about this girl that her family is going to, she meets this guy there, and he's actually a famous rock star, but she has no idea, and she kind of just gets to know him, and they're just kind of meeting each other and getting to know each other during this first book on her trip to, I think she went to New York. Anyway, I don't know how many people have read this, and I kind of remember at the time, the Zoe fans enjoyed this, but I remember it kind of getting some hate because I don't know if she had a ghostwriter or something. I'm not really sure how she wrote the book, but I think people were hating because of that. I don't know. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was so fun. I swept through this series, all three books, so quickly. I bought every single one when they would come out right away, and I was so excited to read these books. A book everyone loved, but you didn't. For this one, I'm doing From Lukov with Love. I know that this is a very, very, very loved book. I know Mariana Zapata is a very loved author. This is the only book I've read from her, so I may give her another chance. I'm not sure. But the couple, they were cute, and I really liked the ice skating. I thought that was really fun to kind of get into in that storyline. I just didn't love the nicknames he called her and kind of her past with him. It felt just, I don't know, it just rubbed me the wrong way. So I didn't love that whole aspect of it, and it kind of just ruined the rest of the book for me. A book you read the fastest. So this one I did We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. I read this so quickly. I'm a fast reader in general, but I read this in, I feel like it was like an hour and a half. I really did not, when I looked at the clock after I finished it, I was like, no way I actually just read that this fast. But it's YA, super fast paced book in general. The chapters are like 2 pages. Most of them are anyway. They're super short chapters. And the font's really big, and a lot of the pages kind of only have like some, almost, it looks almost like poems or the way that they're written, and so it's like in little clumps and it's only a couple of lines, and the font is big too, so it just makes the pages really short. Yeah, I finished this super fast. It was kept me on the edge of my seat too. A book that deserves more hype. I picked 2 books for this one. I picked Funny You Should Ask by Alyssa Sussman and The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. I've seen these on like TikTok, BookTube a little bit, but not a ton, especially The Cheat Sheet. I think I saw like one video of this when it came out. I don't know, it wasn't a lot of views, and I think that was the only video I saw on it, but I remember saying it was about a dancer and a football player, and I'm a dancer now, a dance teacher, and so I was very interested in that right away. I love when things involve dance. I think it's so fun because I kind of already know the background of it. So I think it's really fun to see how they write about it. And she was kind of a retired dance teacher in this too. So I thought that was really fun to see. But I remember I saw one video and I was so intrigued by it, and it just wasn't, all over the bookstores. I couldn't really find it. It took me forever to find this book. But I was so glad I got it when I read it, and it's just so good. I know her other books have blown up, When in Rome and Practice Makes Perfect. But this one, I think, I haven't read those two yet, but this one, I loved this book so much. This is what made me start annotating some stuff in my book, started highlighting and tabbing more. It just kind of brought that to me. I'd never really felt the urge until I read this book, and I was like, oh yeah, this is what it's all about. But it's just so cute, a YA romance. There's fake dating in it, and I love that. So I thought that was really fun too. Great read though. And then for my other one, Funny You Should Ask. Again, I think I'd seen a couple videos about this. I'm not really necessarily sure where I even learned about this book. I might have just read about it, saw it in a store because I thought the cover's gorgeous. But I thought the cover was pretty, so I'm sure I probably just picked it up and started reading the back. But it's about an interviewer, and she's interviewing this famous celebrity. I think he's an actor, and it's a then and now. And the interview when it happened, I think maybe it was like 10 years ago. I'm not 100%, but her interviewing him and how this interview kind of just broke out on the internet because they had this undeniable chemistry between them, and they were only together for one day. And so you see how they are during the interview, and they see how they are outside of the interview. And then it just took the internet by storm. So then they were asked to do this interview again, and they finally came back again. I think it was 10 years later, and did the interview again. And you kind of see where they come back together and where their lives are at now 10 years later, because they're adults when they do the interview the first time around and 10 years later. So to see where their lives have changed, and if that chemistry is still there or not. Really fun read. A book that is becoming a movie/TV show. For this, I picked We'll Always Have Summer by Jenny Han. Obviously, the Summer I Turned Pretty trilogy is a TV show, but the third season come out yet, so I picked the third book. I love the show. I love the books. I do love the books more. I think I like season one more than the first book, though, but I also watched the first season before I read the first book. And if you're planning on doing that, it's very confusing, the first book, because there's a lot of stuff the first book is more past and present, whereas everything that kind of happens in the past happens in the present with the present stuff that happens in the book in the show. So it's a little confusing to read the book after watching the first season of the show. But I read the other two before season two came out. So I got just the book versions first instead of watching the seasons first, and I think that made it easier but also more annoying when you watch the show because it's not exactly how the books are, and that just always ticks everyone off. But I'm very excited for season 3. Obviously, I'm Team Conrad, because if you read the books and you're not Team Conrad, that's insane. You have to be Team Conrad if you read the books. So obviously, I'm very excited for season 3 to come around. A book you reread the most. I've only reread one book or series, and that was the Selection series. I grabbed the one because I think this one was my favorite to reread the second time around. It kind of had the most action going on. So these are YA dystopian romance books. There's the main 3, the Selection, the Elite, and the One, and then there's kind of an off series that has The Heir and the Crown. The main 3 are the ones I've reread. I think the One is my favorite one I reread, though, for sure, going back at it a second time. I love this series. It kind of kickstarted me on my whole reading journey. It was the first time I ever saw like books on TikTok, and I was like, I don't even like reading. Why am I getting book videos? And I finally decided just to pick it up, and I read these so fast. They were so good. I know I didn't like because it kind of has a Bachelor style trope to it, and I never really got into The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, so I didn't think I was gonna enjoy these books that much, but I really enjoyed them, and I think they're super fun. I really love America's character. I think she's such an awesome character to have in this series and this book. And this was the only series I've ever reread or really honestly had the urge to reread, and it was just as fun the second time around. A book from a genre you don't typically read. So I'm bringing back We Were Liars, and Carrie Soto is back. I We Were Liars is the only mystery thriller book I've ever read, and I definitely plan to pick up more now because I did really enjoy this. And then Carrie Soto is back, and Daisy Jones and the Six are the only literary fiction books that I've read, and I really thoroughly enjoyed them. I'm excited to read more of Taylor Jenkins Reid for sure, and maybe get more into literary fiction, a book that deserves all the hype it gets. I picked the ACOTAR series. A Court of Wings and Ruin is my favorite of the first 4 books from Rhys and Feyre's point of views. I think every bit of hype that this series gets is very warranted. It really does deserve it. I went into it being like, oh my god, these are gonna be overhyped books. They're just, everyone always talks about them, and I'm just not gonna love them as much. It's gonna be so disappointing. But I really, really, really did love this series. And if you've only picked up the first one's a little slow, not as interesting, especially once you get to the second one. As long as you can get to the second one, please try to give it a shot because it's so worth it. The storyline, the character building, all the characters, you just feel really connected to them really fast too. What you'd recommend when you are asked to give a recommendation. So I picked 3 books: Daisy Jones and the Six, Red, White, and Royal Blue, and Never. I picked Daisy Jones and the Six more for if someone is maybe just starting to get into reading, doesn't really know what they like, or maybe someone who has been reading but they're not really enjoying fantasy or romance or mystery thrillers. I think this is just an easy book. It's pretty short. It's written in interview style, so it reads really fast. You're not just reading paragraphs, you're reading like 1 or 2 lines at a time. And the character names are right there with it, so you never really get them mixed up. It's pretty easy to tell who's speaking at all times. And then just having the band is very interesting to it. It's also like a little bit of romance and just a very interesting storyline, and it's like a little bit historical fiction, so you're kind of getting a little bit of everything with this book. And I think this is a great book to recommend to people who aren't necessarily sure what they're wanting to read yet, or maybe if they didn't like the other genres so far. And then Red, White, and Royal Blue I picked if someone does like romance, they know that they prefer a romance book, but they're still kind of new to reading. I kind of did these all as if someone's newer to reading and not as into it. So I picked Red, White, and Royal Blue because while it's a little bit of a longer romance book, it's just, there's lots of like text messages and emails, so that makes it read quicker on those parts too. 2 characters that are kind of really opposite from each other, and just not your typical romance kind of book setting, not a small town, not even really friends to lovers. It's not really enemies to lovers either though. It's just, I guess, more rivals to lovers maybe, but still not even fully there. I think it's a little bit more different than some of the other romance books. It's adult, so if they're not wanting kind of that YA vibe either, this makes it more fun too. I don't know, I think their banter is so good, and that keeps you really entertained through the couple as well. And then I did Never. If they're kind of wanting a fantasy book, if that's kind of what they're leaning towards, I thought Never would be a great book to recommend, especially since Jessa Hastings is new to writing fantasy. It's not a super intense world building political fantasy. It's a very easy read. You get right into the world, and it's a retelling of Peter Pan. So most people already know that story, whether you watch the Disney version, read other books, watched any other version that already exists in movie wise too. So it's something we kind of all know. We're familiar with Peter, we're familiar with some of the ideas of Neverland and the Lost Boys and the mermaids, but it just takes it to kind of a deeper, almost darker place in that. And so I think this is easy to get into just because, like I said, there's not a lot of world building. You're not just sitting here for 100 pages learning about everything. It happens with Daphne's character. You learn everything with Daphne. So I think it's just an easy one, especially to get into if you're new to fantasy. Book that has your favorite characters. For this one, I picked Magnolia Park's The Long Way Home. I picked this one because I feel like you get a really even, or I feel like you get a lot from all of the characters in this book. They're together a lot more throughout this one than they are in Magnolia Parks or Daisy Hates. These are my favorite books ever, my favorite characters ever. I love all of them so much. But obviously, you get a lot of Magnolia, you get a lot of BJ, obviously, in her books. But you get a lot of Daisy in this too, because Magnolia and Daisy have a little bit more of a friendship. You get a good amount of Christian in this. You get a lot of Julian in this. I feel like you get more Bridget than you got in the first book in this one as well. Even through just BJ's point of view, you get more Bridget. I don't know, I feel like you get a lot of all of the characters. They're together a lot more. They hang out a lot more because of obviously stuff that happens in the first two books. So their group meshes more into one group in this one. So I picked this one because I feel like this just has the most amount of all of the characters. A book you wish you could live in. So I decided not to just repeat Magnolia Parks or some others of my absolute favorites, not just so I don't sound too repetitive. So I picked The Naturals. I love this series. This is a 5-star series. Absolutely. I mean, this is another one of my absolute favorites ever. I think this is a world I would love to live in. I've always been very intrigued by kind of the, I don't know, crime solving world. I don't know. I've always loved psychology. I've always loved sociology. I've loved learning about them. I've loved learning about how people's brains work and how they think and why certain things cause them to do certain things and how everything's not necessarily black and white in the world. And I always loved Criminal Minds. I loved all of these kind of crime shows. But I think I would love to live in this world. Just my life's a little boring, and I think if I want to live somewhere, I want to live somewhere that has a lot going on. Because I'm over the routine of the everyday, just, waking up, getting ready, going to work, coming home, more action and adventure in my life. And so I think these would definitely bring that. A book you thought you'd hate but you ended up loving. I picked Fourth Wing for this one. If you watched my first video that was every book I read in 2023, you would know that I loved both of these books. I'm excited to finish the rest of the series. They turned into some of my absolute favorite books ever, right up there with Magnolia Parks. And I did not think I was gonna like these books. Originally, I picked it up because my sister wanted me to read it, and I was like, ugh, fine, I guess I'll read it. But I'm not really into like talking animals and stuff like that in books or in shows, and I've never really been interested in dragons either. Like, it never really interested me. And so I really didn't think I was going to enjoy this book. But the dragons ended up being honestly my favorite part of the series. They were so funny. They had a lot more depth to them than I realized. And it wasn't just like, talking animals. It was a lot more than that. I think I wasn't expecting that. I don't know. I love this book, and I can't imagine if I hadn't ever picked it up, or if my sister didn't tell me to read it, or if I waited even longer than I already did. I owned this book for so long before I picked it up. And I'm so glad I finally did, because I really did love this book. A book that made you cry. So for this, I picked two books. I picked Daisy Hates the Great Undoing and A Court of Silver Flames. So I'll talk about this one first. Again, obviously, we know I love this series. It's getting old. But this one, Wow, The Long Way Home, also made me cry. The Great Undoing just really hit me in the heart really hard. Was not expecting it to, because I really thought I enjoyed Magnolia and BJ more than I enjoyed Daisy, Christian, and Julian. I was very mistaken, because I really loved them, and I don't know if I could pick one over the other, honestly. Um, I just, it, the ending just broke my heart. And if you didn't know about these books, you have Magnolia Parks, Daisy Hates, Magnolia Parks, Long Way Home, and Daisy Hates the Great Undoing are the ones currently out. And in these books, they kind of happen in the same timeline, but you get two different point of views. But it doesn't feel repetitive, because they're in two very different worlds. Like, Magnolia is more of the London socialite, and then Daisy's more in this kind of drug lord world. So while they hang out, see each other regularly, their friend groups are a little bit interconnected, and they happen in the same timeline, they don't feel repetitive when you go from one to the other. Like, I don't think you would have to tandem read them at all. I don't know. I don't even think that's recommended to do. Um, they're very different from one another, so it's not a repetitive feeling when you're reading these. But a lot of stuff happened in The Long Way Home that I was like, oh, I'm kind of interested to see how it goes down in this book, because they were kind of connected. Well, you didn't even get to that in this book. You got completely different things that happened that you didn't know happened, and they were while The Long Way Home was really devastating and heartbreaking at the end, I was not ready for everything that was going to go down at the end of The Great Undoing. Honestly, from the last 100 pages of this book, it was just like boom, 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 heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak. I was so sad. I was crying. The end really, really got me because I was like, just of course, one more thing to put on top of them. Why not? It just really, it broke my heart so much. But it's such a good series. Next, we have A Court of Silver Flames. This is the last book that's currently out in the ACOTAR series by Sarah J. Maas. This was my favorite of all of them. I knew the second we got more of Nesta, especially in Akamov, I was very intrigued by her, and then very, very, very intrigued by her in Aka War. I was really excited to learn more about her, and it just made me even more excited to get to A Court of Silver Flames. I know this is most people's least favorite of the series, and a lot of people really hate Nesta, but I think how it made me cry in this book was just her storyline, everything she kind of has kept hidden inside. She comes off very cold-hearted and rude. You wouldn't think she cares about Feyre at all, but you learn that's really the opposite in this book. And she's very, very emotional, and I don't think she really just knows how to handle her emotions. And so her stories and hearing all of the other stories of the characters in this book and everything that they've all gone through and why now they're doing what they're doing and just everything they go through along the way in this book and their journey. It just was so special and it made me tear up so many times. Just there's a lot of woman empowerment in this book, and I think that just made me tear up. Just the way they'd talk about it and how excited they were to just be powerful and strong and able to defend themselves and not feel so weak anymore, even though they weren't. Just that feeling you kind of have sometimes, you feel defenseless almost, and them kind of getting over that and learning how to not feel that way anymore. It was so powerful. And then Cassian and Azriel standing back and letting and helping them along the way and never once tearing them down about it ever, absolutely not. So it just made you love them even more too. I know this book was my absolute favorite in the series for sure. um, if you've been holding off because you're not a big Nesta fan, you may still not be after this book, but I still would say give it a shot because you will fall in love with other characters even if you don't fall in love with Nesta. It's really worth it. A book you wish you could read it for the first time. So for this, I picked The Summer of Sloane. I read this book my junior year of high school, and she was letting us pick whatever book we could have ever wanted to read and do a project over it. I love the ocean. I love love the ocean. I've been to Hawaii. It's my favorite place on earth. But I had not been at this point, but I still loved the ocean and the beach. So I saw that there was a surfer on the cover, and I was like, yeah, I'm interested. Immediately I was interested. And it's set in Hawaii in this book, and I don't something about it. I'm sure if I reread it, maybe it wouldn't be as amazing as I remembered it being, but it was just so good, and it really started the whole reading journey for me. It's what made me pick up the selection. It was like, okay, wait, I read this book in one sitting, couldn't put it down. I got 100% on the project. Like, normally I'm struggling to read any book ever, especially for an English class. And I just loved every second of it. I remembered all of it. I thought I could not comprehend anything I was reading for the life of me for my entire school life, but that was so wrong. I just wasn't reading things I wanted to read. And I fell in love with reading because of this book, and it just kickstarted everything. I picked up the selection after it, and then I started just buying books and reading them. I had a really fast pace and can't stop still. I'm so in love. And I wish I could reread it for the first time again to get that feeling of just being so excited to finally pick up a book. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you are seeing this again, please like and comment and subscribe. Comment any other ideas you kind of want me to film. Bye, guys.